Hello and welcome back to Beckler Guitars and Repair, and today we're checking out a cool old acoustic guitar. This is a 1974 Yamaki. Let's check it out. So this guitar came in the original, like, brown faux leather gator skin style case, which is pretty cool. It's got a really nice blue interior as well. So yeah, nice little bonus there. Alright, so yeah, Yamaki guitars are, I think, criminally underrated. These are a really high-end Japanese guitar that was distributed to North America in the 60s and 70s. And they're pretty much Martin clones. That's kind of what they're going after. But they are outstanding guitars. I've played about 10 or 15 of them, and every single one of them has sounded just amazing. I've fixed up and sold quite a few of them. And every time I see one for sale, I get excited because they are fantastic guitars. And so this is a solid top, solid back and sides, and a lot of the time you can find them with Brazilian rosewood, which is really nice. And that's the case on this one. So this one has a solid cedar top. It's got multiple binding. So I think that's like a 6 or 7 piece binding. It's got a rosewood bridge on here with bone saddle. And the bridge pins are plastic. Got a nice rosette there, as well as Brazilian rosewood fingerboard, mother of pearl dot inlays. The neck is bound as well. And then we've got a rosewood veneer on the headstock. And here's a look at the really gorgeous, streaky Brazilian rosewood in the back. And we've got a nice kind of pattern on the center line there. Then we've got a mahogany neck. And I think one of the only criticisms I have of the Yamakis is they usually come with pretty terrible machine heads. Sometimes they're just fine. These ones look like they could use some work. Looks like we're missing a screw there, and I think one of them was slipping, but I guess we'll see that when I do the specs here. The action on this is nice, and we do have a little bit of room on the saddle, but I think I might even sand down that saddle just a little bit more to get a little bit better action. I really like lower action. Some people don't like that on acoustics, but I use a pretty thin pick. But I might just leave this as is, because I haven't really decided if I'm going to sell it yet. But we are going to do a little bit of work to this guitar. So there are a few very small cracks. So we've got one here, we've got a longer one here, and one over here in the lower bout near the edge here. And I did test these out. And these cracks do go through to the wood. They're not just gloss cracks. So what we're going to do is cleat these cracks with cedar cleats. And I'll show you the method I use to seat cleats using magnets. And then we'll make sure that these cracks are nice and closed and sealed, and they shouldn't ever open again. And cracks happen on acoustics due to changes in temperature or humidity. Basically, the wood dries out and can crack. So if you're not keeping your guitars in a humidified environment, that can happen. Not every guitar will crack. Sometimes you can have a high-end thin top acoustic that is never humidified properly and it just never cracks. It's just kind of luck of the draw. It really depends on the individual piece of wood for the guitar. So because this guitar is so old, it likely won't crack anywhere else. But we still have to deal with the cracks that have already happened on the guitar. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And yeah, these guitars being solid wood is a big deal, especially vintage guitars, because the older they get, the better they sound. especially solid wood guitars, because all the moisture in the wood kind of evaporates out and works its way out, and the wood becomes more resonant and just sounds better and better and better. So this guitar really does sound great, and I would compare it to the sound of like an old Martin. So alright, let's get on the bench and take a look at some specs. I'm just going to quickly show off the sound a little bit. So this has got old rusty strings on it, and it's not quite set up properly, but even so, this guitar really sounds good. So I'm just using my lapel mic here to pick it up. So yeah, very resonant, loud, lots of sustain, good low end. It's a nice sounding guitar. Alright, weighing in 4 pounds, 7.9 ounces. Width at the nut is a 1.70, and at the 12th fret, a 2.10. First fret neck depth is 8.92. And I'll take it from the 11th fret because the 12th is turning into the heel. So 1.03. Alright, here's a look at the neck profile. So this profile is called like a soft V. So it's a little bit more pointed at the top. Just a little bit more extreme than like a C. But it does flatten out more to like a C shape down the neck. So this is very like similar to a vintage Martin neck. So yeah, the neck reads a little chunkier, but it's more that V. There's not much shoulder here, so it feels pretty good. It feels a bit chunky, but not quite as chunky as the numbers would suggest. But it does feel good. So here are all the little cedar cleats I've made. Basically, I had a sheet of cedar and I cut them with a bandsaw, and then I shaped them on the belt sander here. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to find the cracks on the inside of the guitar using a magnet method, which I'll show in a sec here. Then we're going to line up the grain of the cedar with the grain on the wood on the top of the guitar, and then we're going to glue that into place. So just picture this on the underside of the top. And what that does is it keeps the crack from opening, because it'll be glued here on the underneath, so it will prevent that from opening further. And then you want to place those about every inch or so on the crack. And then, yeah, that's basically how you repair a crack on an acoustic. And I'm using these very, very strong rare earth woodworking magnets. They're super strong magnets to the point where they're very hard just to even get apart. But then once you do, you can use them for this job. Might need a tool to pry them apart here. So I've managed to pry some apart, and I'm just going to demonstrate what we're doing. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a cleat with a magnet on the underside with glue on top of the cleat. I'm going to go in underneath the guitar and put this right on the area of the crack, and these magnets are so strong that it's actually going to hold the cleat right in place where the crack is. So we can see on the magnet at the top, I'm getting the perfect placement for my cleat. So that's usually a big part of the problem, is getting the cleats in the right spot when you're doing this. So this way works quite well. Alright, so here's my little jig here. So I've got the magnet. I've got a little piece of tape that's holding the magnet to my finger, and then another little piece of double-sided tape on top of the magnet to hold the cleat to the magnet, and then we've got glue on the top here that's going to hold our cleat in place against the other magnet. So now I'm just going to stick my hand in the sound hole and line it up with the magnet. So yeah, there we are. So I'm just going to get, you can feel the bracing on the inside too. So I just want to make sure that my cleat is not on a brace, otherwise it's not going to anchor properly to the wood. And then, yeah, you can go about 1 inch away from a brace too. So you want to do a cleat about every inch of bare wood on the crack. So this crack has already been sealed, or filled rather, with wood glue, so that part is covered. Once we get a cleat every inch or so and set, that'll be good for the crack. So I'm actually doing more than one at a time, so I got a cleat going here and here. You just don't want to get too close with the magnets because they'll mess each other up, so you want to make sure you have at least like 6 inches apart. So I've actually got 3 going right now, and I usually let them sit for about 10 minutes to set, and then after that they'll fully dry kind of in place by themselves. I also use this little lighted mirror to make sure that the cleats are in the right spot on the inside. So I don't know if I can get this on film here. There is our cleat right there, and another one there, and another one there. So yeah, they're following the crack, so that's great, they're in the right spot. And I forgot to film it, but I do like to seal the cracks with just a tiny bead of lacquer, so that just prevents any moisture from getting in and just totally seals it. So there's just going to be one very thin strip running into the crack just to dry it and seal it. Alright, so yeah, the cracks are fully repaired, and they shouldn't open again. And if you get it right in the light, you can see those little beads of lacquer that I used, but unless you're really looking for it, it's pretty hard to see. So yeah, let's have a look with the endoscope on how those cleats lined up. Alright, here we are with the endoscope, and yeah, we can see that nice Brazilian rosewood on the back and on the sides. And there is our heel block. See our bracing and our kerfing. I think I'm trying to get a good angle on the cleats here. There is our neck block. We got our serial number there with the model number, the AY372S. And everything's nice and clean on the inside, not a lot of glue squeeze out or anything else like that. And there's one of the cleats, that's the one in the lower bout. And there's the line of cleats on the other side that follow the crack there. So it looks like they're all nice and seated properly. And it looks like they are right where they should be, right on the crack there. So I'm happy with that placement. And everything looks good in here. Okay, let's have a look at the condition. So yeah, our headstock's really nice shape, no scratches or dings anywhere. It's got that Brazilian rosewood veneer over the mahogany headstock. We've got a nice polished bone nut. Looks really good. There's very minimal fret wear on here. There's a little bit of fingernail starting, like pitting, that's just starting, but it's hardly noticeable. And I did buff the frets and oil the fingerboard so we can see it's a really nice piece of rosewood, Brazilian, nice streaks in there. Looks really good. We've got our mother of pearl dot inlays as well. And other than the cracks that have been repaired on the top, it's in really nice shape. There's no scratches or dings anywhere. And we've got our bone saddle there, which is nice and polished as well. And yeah, really nice grain on this piece of cedar for the top, and nice binding. Our pick guard looks good, not lifting or peeling off anywhere. And our multi-ply rosette looks good as well. Let's flip it to the back. So yeah, it's got really nice, dark, streaky Brazilian rosewood. It looks really good. And you can tell this is solid back and sides by, for example, if you find a really light streak on the back, if you flip over and look in the sound hole, you should be able to see the same streak. Now keep in mind, depending on how thick it is, it might be slightly different, but usually they follow the same band. So if you see a big band of like leather wood on the back and you flip it around, look in the sound hole, and it's there as well, then you know it's solid wood. And that's the case with this guitar. Look at the sides. There's some slight scuffing in the back, but you can only really see it if you hold it up to the finish. There's a little bit of buckle worming right there. And I haven't cleaned this yet, so there's some fingerprints, but I'll make sure that's all cleaned up. And there's a look at our neck join. There's no gaps or spaces. Sometimes there can be a little gap there, but this one held really well over the years. And our mahogany neck, which is super smooth. There's no dings, maybe like a slight little impression here. You can kind of feel if you rub. And then one of our machine heads was loose, so I replaced the 2 screws here. So that's all working well now. And yeah, just a really good looking solid wood guitar. Yeah, Yamakis are super well made and they always sound great. So if you see one for a decent price locally, I would go ahead and at least try it out because they are really great guitars. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and restring this and see what kind of a setup we can get. Alright, let's check the setup. So, if I use my straight edge, you can see that there's just a very small gap between the straight edge and the fingerboard. So that means I've got the truss rod set nice and tightly. The neck is nice and straight. And then here in the 3rd fret, when I use the 3rd fret, you can see that the string is just resting very gently against that 1st fret. So that means we've got nice low action over here in the cowboy chord area. And that means our truss rod's set nice and tight, the neck is straight, and the nut is cut nicely. And then here at the 12th fret, check our action. So we're sitting at just above 1.5 millimeters at the low E, and closer to between 1.5 and 1.75 at the low E, and just above between 1.25 and 1.5 at the high E. So set very low for an acoustic guitar. That's kind of like where I like to set mine. I use a pretty thin pick. If you use a thicker pick, you might want a little higher action than that, but it's nice to know that you can get that low. I'm just going to run through the fretboard just to make sure there's no buzzing or fretting out anywhere. I like to speed up this part, but if you want to hear it in real time, slow down the player to 25%. So yeah, very nice low action with no fretting or buzzing out anywhere. And this is a bound neck, so you don't need to worry about the tang sticking out of the frets. The top of the frets are all really nice and shiny and smooth, so no issues there. And the binding is actually a little bit rounded too, so it feels really good in your hands, nice and smooth. And it plays great. Alright, let's go ahead and mic this up and see how it sounds. For mics, I'm using an SM57, and I'm using an Audio-Technica P48 as like an overhead room mic, kind of a combination. So I'm just going to finger pick for a little bit and then use a pick for strumming. I'm using a medium gauge pick. It's nylon, and yeah, let's hear how it sounds. Using a pick now. Using a capo on the 3rd fret. All right, final thoughts on the 1974 Yamaki AY372S. If you're looking for vintage Martin sound, vintage Martin specs, vintage Martin quality, but you don't want to spend vintage Martin prices, find a Yamaki. Because these are fantastic guitars, just super high quality. They always sound great. I've played about 15 of them, and every single one of them has sounded awesome. And they stand the test of time. Everyone that I've seen, there's no big problems with them. Like the bridges hardly ever lift off. There's never any bellying. There's no bellying on this guitar either. Bellying is just basically when the bridge pulls up the wood on the top of the guitar, which happens a lot in some older guitars. And it doesn't seem to happen a lot with the Yamakis. And yeah, just quality materials, really nice Brazilian rosewood on a lot of Yamakis too. Bone saddle, bone nut, and really nice fingerboard. The neck is bound, the body's bound, the back is bound, and just really nice quality on these 70s Yamakis. And I'd have no problem putting this up against like a vintage Martin. I have no doubt that this thing would hold its own, and I've played a lot of vintage Martins. But the secret's not quite out on these things yet, so you can still find them relatively cheap. And they are just great guitars. So if you can find one for a decent price locally, I would say jump on it, go check it out. And you might be really surprised in how good it sounds. And I've just got too many acoustic guitars right now, so if you're interested in this, it'll be up on the Reverb. Link will be in the description. But that's going to be it for today. Thank you for tuning in to Beckler Guitars and Repair, and I'll have more for you really soon. Thanks a lot.